The chronometer aboard the Unrelenting Truth skipped the second hour again, its brass face flickering from 01:59:59 directly to 0:30:00, as if time itself had developed a wound. I am Inquisitor Cassia Vex of the Ordo Malleus, and I have spent 30 years cataloguing impossibilities that lesser minds would dismiss as equipment failure. This was not equipment failure. The metallic taste of recycled air mixed with sanctified incense filled my mouth as I watched the astropath convulse in his restraint harness, blood flowering across his chest in the precise outline of an empty throne. "The second seat bleeds!" Astropath Meridian gasped through his augmetic throat grill, the words carrying harmonics that made the ship's hull vibrate in sympathy. Each repetition carved deeper stigmata into his flesh, not random psychic wounds, but geometric precision that hurt to observe directly. The medici servitors sprayed coagulant foam that would not adhere, sloughing away as if the wounds refused healing by design rather than trauma. The transmission had originated 6 hours ago from coordinates that should not exist. "Forge World Keth Secundus," declared Perditus 3 centuries past, its name scrubbed from every star chart in the segmentum solar. Yet here was proof of its continued existence, broadcast on frequencies that predated the age of strife, carrying a message that broke fundamental rules of reality with each syllable. Frost crept along the corridor bulkheads in angular patterns that avoided curves as if geometry had grown ritual significance. The servo skulls providing constant surveillance hovered uncertainly, their machine spirits agitated by data they could not process. Every cogitator printout throughout the ship excised the numeral 2. Calibration trees jumped from 1 to 3, targeting runes refused paired inputs, and twin-linked weapon arrays reported themselves as singular units. "Inquisitor," my aide savant whispered, his voice tight with poorly concealed terror. "The ship's Auspex arrays are experiencing systematic failures. Binary cant has become incomplete. The tech adepts cannot vocalize certain numerical sequences without their vocal cords seizing." I rose from my command throne, feeling the familiar weight of my rosette grown cold despite regulated atmospheric controls. The deck plates thrummed with a new rhythm beneath my boots. 2 beats, then pause, repeating endlessly, like a mechanical heartbeat counting something that should not be counted. Temperature readings fluctuated without meteorological cause, creating breath fog that coiled into right-angled filaments before dissolving. In the navigation sanctum, my navigator looked up from his charts with ancient eyes that had stared into the Imperium for 4 centuries. "The coordinates exist, Inquisitor," he said without preamble, his third eye sealed behind blessed adamantium shutters. "They exist in a way that makes my soul ache to contemplate. The Astronomicons, light bends around that region of space, creating shadows that move independently of celestial mechanics." I studied the star charts, noting deliberate gaps in the scribe's careful notations, spaces left blank not from oversight, but from systematic ignorance. "Analysis, Remembrancer 9, I commanded my personal servo skull. Its machine spirit somehow managed urgency despite mechanical limitations. "Coordinates confirmed, Inquisitor. Long-range auger arrays detect massive structured presence where Imperial records list empty void. The object exists in quantum uncertainty, observable only when not directly examined. Mass shadow equivalent to continental plates arranged in lattice regular patterns." The astropath's final scream died as his heart stopped, but the stigmata continued bleeding, each drop forming numerals on the deck plates. Only the numeral 1, repeated endlessly, as if reality had forgotten how to count beyond unity. A junior scribe attempted to transcribe a catechism about the Emperor's 20 sons, and froze at 19, his stylus squealing against slate as his throat worked soundlessly around the missing number. "Magos, Explorator, Thane Sigma 7, I voxed to the ship's Mechanicus contingent. "Prepare advanced augury equipment for planetary investigation. Summon Kill Team Mortis and Tempestus Scion Squad Corvin for briefing in 1 hour. The reply came in fragmented Binharic cant, the Magos's vocal systems struggling with numerical sequences that contained forbidden digits. Steam whistled from rebreather vents as shame fogged his optical lenses at the inability to complete standard liturgical responses. Duty carved its familiar path through my consciousness as I submitted sealed warrants to my own conscience and the bridge. We would translate to coordinates that existed in defiance of Imperial cartography, track this wound in reality to its source, and cauterize or be consumed in the attempt. The two-beat rhythm now pulsed through the ship's superstructure, a patient countdown towards something that waited with the patience of eternity itself. "Set course for the impossible coordinates," I commanded, my voice carrying across the bridge with the authority of the Golden Throne. "Prepare for translation in 6 hours." As the unrelenting truth adjusted its heading toward darkness between stars, frost continued spreading across my study's viewport in patterns that resembled circuit diagrams or ritual circles depending on observation angle. The ship's chronometer skipped again, but more disturbing than missing time were the moments of absolute silence that filled the gaps, brief instances where even my heartbeat paused, as if the universe held its breath in anticipation of revelations that would reshape the very foundations of Imperial truth. In the distance, barely audible above mechanical hymns, came the sound of something vast and patient, waiting in the void with the certainty of inevitable discovery. The translation process felt wrong from the first moment of warp space compression. Instead of the familiar violent wrench of reality reasserting itself, the unrelenting truth seemed to unravel thread by thread before being rewoven into a universe that hummed with fundamental wrongness. I stood on the bridge as we emerged into the Keth system, watching our destination materialize in defiance of every natural law I had spent 3 decades cataloguing. Keth Secundus hung in space like a wound that refused to heal properly. Direct observation caused the planet to dissolve into cosmic debris and stellar dust. Yet peripheral vision revealed a massive world orbiting a star that cast shadows in directions that violated basic principles of illumination. The ship's chronometer continued its aberrant behavior, skipping the second hour, while our auger arrays painted conflicting data streams across the tactical displays. "Magos Explorator Thane Sigma 7 to the bridge," I commanded through the Vox network. The response came fragmented, every second word consumed by static that felt purposeful rather than random. Within minutes, my investigation team assembled in the primary strategium under the brass Aquilus, whose twin heads had been filed smooth by centuries of fearful maintenance. Thane Sigma 7 arrived first, his augmetic limbs moving with mechanical precision, despite the agitation of his machine spirits. Binary cant streamed from his Vox grill in incomplete sequences, numerical liturgies developing gaps where certain digits should flow. "Planetary analysis proves challenging, Inquisitor," he reported, optical lenses flickering with static whenever they focused on the tactical hololith. "Surface structures exist in overlapping dimensional states. My cogitators refuse to process architectural data that violates Euclidean geometry." Kill Team Mortis entered in perfect formation, 5 iron hands Astartes, whose cybernetic enhancements gleamed with sacred oils. Brother Sergeant Carax's servo arm twitched involuntarily as his targeting systems attempted to acquire locks on a world that existed in quantum uncertainty. Gene seed memories contain tactical protocols for scenarios we cannot recall learning, he reported, his Vox grill carrying undertones of mechanical confusion. Inherited doctrines reference engagement parameters that have been surgically excised from our biological inheritance. Tempestus Scion Squad Corvan completed the assembly, their carapace armor bearing campaign honors from 100 battlefields. Sergeant Corvan's service tattoos had begun fading in specific patterns, any markings containing paired symbols growing pale as if his flesh rejected their significance. His men maintained parade ground discipline, but their eyes held the hollow look of soldiers confronting truths that challenged fundamental imperial doctrine. Atmospheric readings indicate breathable air with metallic aerosol content, I began, activating displays that showed the planet's surface in all its impossible complexity. Temperature fluctuations follow no meteorological pattern. Most significantly, all scanning attempts reveal massive forge cathedral complexes arranged in geometric patterns that defy conventional analysis. The planet's surface writhed with architectural impossibilities. Spires twisted through dimensions like prayers carved from stone and adamantium, their foundations existing in multiple spatial configurations simultaneously. Streets ran in perfect grids that somehow connected to themselves without forming closed loops, while thermal imaging detected foundries producing heat signatures that registered as negative temperatures. Vox communications will suffer systematic degradation, I continued, noting how my own words occasionally failed to produce sound when containing specific syllables. Equipment calibrated for paired settings will malfunction. Individual team members may experience brief sensor invisibility with no corresponding memory of absence. Our descent through atmospheric layers that tasted of copper and sorrow proceeded in a Valkyrie gunship whose machine spirit grew increasingly agitated with each kilometer of altitude lost. The pilot's vox crackled with reports of successful navigation, despite coordinates that contain numerical gaps where certain positions should exist. The air itself resisted our intrusion, creating turbulence patterns that follow geometric rather than meteorological principles. Through the gunship's armored viewport, the ruins of the massive forge cathedral complex revealed themselves in pulsing illumination. 2 beats of light, then darkness, the familiar rhythm that had infected our ship now emanating from architecture that predated Imperial understanding. Life signs registering anomalous behavior, the pilot reported as we approached the landing zone. Individual team members dropping to 0 readings for nanosecond intervals, then reappearing with no displacement. Pattern follows the 2-beat pulse. I felt the absence myself. Brief moments when my consciousness seemed to step sideways into a space that did not exist, returning with memories of darkness that tasted of forgotten names and erased histories. My chronometer skipped beats in sympathy with the planetary rhythm, while frost formed on the gunship's interior surfaces in angular patterns that avoided curves, as if geometry had developed ritual significance. Touchdown occurred on soil that crunched beneath our boots like crystallized time, each footstep releasing metallic dust that hung in the air longer than physics should allow. The massive ruins loomed above us, their twisted spires reaching toward a sky that showed different constellations depending on observation angle. Individual team members flickered briefly out of existence on our Auspex displays before reappearing with expressions of confusion and half-remembered dread. The Forge Cathedral's entrance yawned, before us, like a wound in reality itself, its dimensions shifting subtly as we approached. The persistent 2-beat rhythm called from within the darkness, a mechanical heartbeat counting something that should not be counted. As we formed up for entry, I noticed my reflection in the polished surfaces of our equipment showed gaps where certain details should exist, as if reality itself had developed selective blindness to specific aspects of our presence. The threshold awaited, promising revelations that would challenge everything we understood about the Emperor's grand design and the true nature of Imperial history. We crossed the threshold into corridors where architecture had learned to lie. The walls curved in directions that bypassed 3-dimensional space entirely, creating passages that somehow led deeper underground, while ascending toward surfaces that existed above our entry point. My lumen pack cast shadows that fell upward, pooling against a ceiling that pressed down, despite stretching beyond visual range. The inscriptions began immediately, or rather, their systematic absence did. Every surface bore the scars of methodical erasure, chiseled away with surgical precision that left only ghost impressions in the adamantium plating. Where once the glory of the Second Legion had been proclaimed in high Gothic majesty, now only smooth depressions remained, their emptiness more disturbing than any heretical text. The very act of obliteration had followed ritual patterns, each strike of the chisel conforming to geometric principles that hurt to contemplate directly. Structural integrity appears sound, Despite impossible architecture, Brother Sergeant Carax reported through Vox that fragmented on every second syllable. His Auspex scanner painted conflicting readings across his retinal display as targeting spirits failed to establish proper range finding to surfaces existing in multiple dimensional states simultaneously. Gene seed memories contain gaps that should not exist, inherited tactical knowledge that simply ends mid-thought. Magos Thane Sigma 7's cogitators struggled with data corruption, following no logical pattern. His optical lenses flickered as readouts displayed numerical sequences that skipped systematically, refusing to process certain glyph combinations as if machine spirits had developed selective blindness. Historical records show quantum-level editing, he reported, binary cant fragmenting whenever specific numerical references attempted transmission. My memory engrams misfire when routed through that topology. The air tasted of iron filings and crystallized grief, each breath carrying metallic particles that settled in our lungs like powdered sorrow. Temperature fluctuations created localized frost patterns that avoided certain geometric shapes with deliberate precision, ice-forming angular configurations that resembled circuit diagrams or ritual circles, depending on observation angle. The walls wept tears of liquid metal, each droplet striking the floor with the persistent two-beat rhythm that had infected our reality since translation. Dust motes fell in patterns defying gravitational physics, swirling away from specific architectural elements as if the atmosphere itself had learned selective amnesia. Servo Skull Remembrancer 9 hummed binary cant in tempo, synchronized to the pulse. 2 quick canticles, pause, repetition, before faltering when attempting to transmit numerals between 1 and 3. Its Vox diaphragm issued only soft clicks where forbidden digits should flow. Sergeant Corvin's Tempestus Scions maintained formation despite equipment failures that followed systematic patterns. Their service tattoos continued fading selectively, any markings containing paired symbols becoming transparent as flesh rejected specific numerical concepts. Standard tactical communications suffering degradation, Corvin reported, words occasionally failing to produce sound when containing particular syllables. We descended through levels containing more space than exterior dimensions should allow, each floor somehow existing in architectural impossibility. The persistent rhythm emanated from walls themselves now, a mechanical heartbeat synchronizing with our pulse rates until individual cardiovascular systems began skipping beats in sympathy with whatever massive engine drove the cathedral's temporal distortions. Brother Thane's servo arm twitched involuntarily as targeting systems processed threat assessments for scenarios existing in spaces between memories. Tactical protocols reference engagement parameters surgically excised from biological inheritance, he reported. Mechanical confusion evident in Vox undertones. The first throne revealed itself in a chamber whose ceiling stretched beyond lumen reach. Not furniture in conventional sense, but a massive dais of black stone radiating cold that bypassed armor thermal regulation entirely. This was not temperature, but negation, a statement carved from absence itself. Channels had been cut into its surface with ritual precision, patterns designed to hold something precious no longer present. The emptiness pulsed with significance, each absent heartbeat marking space where something vital had been systematically removed. Heat fled our presence, as if the throne consumed thermal energy to fuel its own void state existence. The two-beat rhythm originated from the stone itself, a patient countdown toward revelations that would reshape Imperial understanding. Brother Sergeant Carax approached with weapons ready, enhanced senses detecting threat signatures, registering as negative readings on Auspex displays. Genetic memory archives contain defensive protocols for positions we cannot recall occupying, he reported, confusion threading through mechanical certainty. Sergeant Corvin noticed his reflection first in equipment's polished surfaces, armor bearing unfamiliar heraldry that faded during direct observation, insignia existing only in peripheral vision before dissolving into standard Tempestus markings. Bone-white chevrons over midnight, a sigil resembling severed wheels bisected by light blades. The image held for heartbeats before draining color like blood drawing back into wounds. The metallic tears increased frequency, each droplet forming geometric patterns on floors that resembled tactical formations or ritual circles depending on observation angle. The substance carried flavor profiles, triggering genetic memories of battles that should not exist in Imperial archives when accidentally ingested through atmospheric filters. Magos. Thane Sigma 7's architectural analysis failed repeatedly as cogitators refused processing measurements of spaces existing in quantum uncertainty. Machine spirits grew agitated, scanning the throne dais, binary prayers developing gaps where specific numerical sequences should flow. Steam whistled from rebreather vents as shame protocols activated at inability to complete standard liturgical responses. Individual team members continued experiencing brief sensor invisibility, life signs vanishing from detection equipment for nanosecond intervals before returning with no memory of absence. The chamber's lumen strips flickered in established rhythm, while breath fog formed geometric patterns before dissipating, according to rules violating basic atmospheric physics. As we prepared advancing deeper into impossible architecture, the throne dais pulsed with residual energy, making equipment register readings in numerical sequences that should not exist. Whatever had occupied this sacred space had been removed with surgical precision, but its absence created wounds in reality continuing to bleed significance into surrounding architecture. The darkness ahead promised revelations challenging our understanding of Imperial history and the Emperor's true design. Beyond the throne chamber, corridors narrowed into passages where architecture defied measurement, leading us deeper into a vast archive facility that contained more storage space than exterior dimensions should accommodate. Databanks stretched in perfect rows under a ceiling that disappeared into darkness, each cogitator humming with residual power despite millennia of systematic abandonment. The persistent two-beat rhythm now emanated from the storage units themselves, a mechanical heartbeat counting fragments of forbidden knowledge. Magos Thane Sigma 7 approached the primary data core with mechanical reverence, optical lenses adjusting to parse Gothic script that flickered between legibility and complete erasure. Archive contains fragmentary campaign records, he reported through Vox crackling with systematic interference. Data recovery protocols experiencing cascading failures whenever attempting complete file reconstruction. The first tactical report materialized in partial fragments across his display screens, victory proclamations with deleted battle brother names, strategic analyses containing gaps where Primarch references should exist, equipment manifests listing absent where gene seed counts demanded numerical values. Each attempt to access missing data triggered system failures following no logical pattern, as if the archive's machine spirits had been programmed with selective amnesia protocols. Brother Sergeant Karak studied incomplete battle formations on tactical hololith projectors, whose light cast shadows defying illumination physics. Engagement records reference doctrines surgically excised from genetic memory inheritance, he reported, servo arm twitching as targeting systems processed threat assessments for scenarios existing between recollection and void. Strategic knowledge for campaigns we cannot recall despite inherited understanding of their outcomes. The chamber's lumen strips maintained their established rhythm. 2 beats of illumination, darkness, repetition, while temperature fluctuations created breath fog, forming geometric patterns resembling tactical formations before dissipating according to atmospheric rules, violating basic physics. Frost accumulated on databank surfaces in angular configurations, avoiding curved elements with deliberate precision, ice crystals growing in circuit patterns that hurt to observe directly. My attempts at filing standard investigative reports revealed bureaucratic horror as my data slate refused saving documents containing specific terminology related to lost legions. Text dissolved whenever certain word combinations appeared in sequence, authentication protocols failing when attempting classification under established inquisitorial categories. The device accepted spatial anomaly descriptions and atmospheric readings, but references to Second Legion caused the screen to grey into a mirror, reflecting my own confused expression. The Iron Hands began experiencing equipment failures as cybernetic enhancements rejected command protocols, their machine spirits growing agitated when processing investigation-related data. Brother Thane's servo arm moved with involuntary precision toward archive sections, registering as empty space on Auspex displays, yet containing massive storage arrays visible to direct observation. His targeting reticules vanished periodically, bionic eye displaying static when focusing on specific databank configurations. Individual team members continued flickering out of existence on sensor displays for nanosecond intervals, returning with expressions of confusion and half-remembered encounters with armored figures bearing unfamiliar heraldry. These absent moments left residual impressions. Tactical formations glimpsed peripherally, battle cries in dialects that should not exist, gene-seed memories of campaigns fought alongside brothers whose names could not be spoken. The archive revealed evidence of massive purge operations conducted with surgical precision beyond conventional record. Destruction. Entire sections showed architectural scars where walls had been systematically unwritten from space-time itself, leaving smooth voids containing no dust, debris, or evidence of previous occupation. This was not deletion, but palinodic excision, reality edited at fundamental levels to ensure complete historical erasure. Steam whistled from Thane Sigma 7's rebreather vents as shame protocols activated at inability to complete liturgical responses containing forbidden numerical sequences. His optical lenses flickered with static, whenever focusing on data existing in quantum uncertainty, simultaneously archived and erased, depending on observation parameters. Binary cant developed gaps where specific digits should flow, machine spirits refusing conjunction operations. Sergeant Corvin's Tempestus Scions maintained formation, despite equipment systematically skipping calibration settings containing paired numbers. Their service tattoos continued fading selectively, markings with dual symbols becoming transparent as flesh rejected specific numerical concepts. Standard tactical communications suffered degradation with every second syllable consumed by purposeful static. The metallic tears increased frequency, each droplet striking floors with the established rhythm, while forming patterns resembling ritual circles or tactical formations depending on observation angle. The substance carried genetic memory triggers when accidentally inhaled through atmospheric filters, evoking recollections of battles that should not exist in Imperial historical records. Deep within the archive's core, we discovered the sealed vault entrance, a door of black stone radiating cold that bypassed armor thermal regulation entirely. Carved into its surface with ritual precision, the high Gothic numeral 2 stood proud from the adamantium, deeper than its own height, and radiating significance proportional to its systematic concealment. Brother Sergeant Carax raised his picked capture device with methodical thoroughness, the mechanism chirping pleasantly as it recorded the door's perfect detail. The printed slate showed immaculate rivets, proud weld seams, unblemished metal surface, but where the numeral should appear, only blank space remained. Repeated attempts yielded identical results. The door rendered completely, except for the forbidden designation that refused documentation. I attempted photography with my personal data slate, achieving similar failure. The vault entrance existed in visual reality while rejecting all technological recording, as if certain truths were too dangerous for preservation beyond direct observation. The 2-beat pulse quickened, mechanical anticipation building as we prepared breaching protocols that would reveal whatever knowledge required such thorough concealment from Imperial consciousness and the very fabric of recorded reality. The vault door responded to conventional breaching with mechanical indifference. Melter charges hissed against black stone that refused molecular disruption, their white-hot streams dissipating like water against absolute zero. Explosives designed to shear adamantium plating detonated with muffled thuds that left no mark, no scoring, no evidence of impact beyond the acrid smell of wasted promethium. Brother Sergeant Carax's power fist struck the surface with force sufficient to crater tank armor, yet produced only a hollow ring that echoed in frequencies that made our bones ache. Magos Thane's Sigma 7 discovered the solution through systematic analysis of architectural impossibilities. Hidden interfaces responded to numerical sequences that systematically omitted specific digits, requiring calculations that bypassed forbidden mathematical concepts entirely. His optical lenses flickered with recognition as ancient protocols accepted inquisitorial authority codes that should not have functioned after millennia of abandonment. The massive portal split along seams invisible until activation, exhaling air that tasted of copper and crystallized time. The numeral 2 remained visible during the opening sequence before fading as if reality itself had grown embarrassed by its brief honesty. The sundering chamber defied architectural logic with walls curving through dimensions that bypassed conventional space entirely. Ancient Mechanicus apparatus lined every surface. Cogitator banks built to specifications that hurt to contemplate, their screens flickering with data streams existing in quantum uncertainty. Memory extraction servitors hung from ceiling mounts like mechanical spiders, their neural probe arrays designed for procedures violating every tenet of Imperial bioethics. At the chamber's center stood a second throne dais surrounded by crystalline matrices, humming with residual power despite centuries of apparent dormancy. The crystals pulsed with established rhythm, 2 beats of illumination, darkness, repetition, while casting shadows falling in directions defying basic illumination physics. Each pulse revealed glimpses of different architectural configurations, as if the chamber existed in multiple temporal states simultaneously. Rules changed as we crossed the threshold. My spoken orders occasionally failed to produce sound, words dissolving into silence, despite proper breath control and vocal cord function. Written text sometimes appeared blank to certain observers while remaining legible to others, creating selective blindness, following no logical pattern. My data slate displayed investigation notes normally until specific terminology appeared, then showed empty pages reflecting my confused expression. The Iron Hands began experiencing catastrophic memory failures as cybernetic enhancements rejected tactical doctrines they had known for centuries. Brother Thane's servo arm moved with involuntary precision, attempting to execute combat maneuvers for scenarios surgically excised from genetic inheritance. Their gene seed memories contained gaps where fundamental Astartes knowledge should exist. Void spaces in biological programming, creating confusion proportional to their systematic concealment. Sundering chamber, I whispered, recognizing the configuration from forbidden texts in my private archive. This was apparatus designed for retroactive reality editing, the systematic removal of historical fact from the fundamental structure of space-time itself. Magos Thane Sigma 7 approached the primary apparatus with mechanical reverence, optical lenses adjusting to past technical specifications, violating basic principles of cogitator design. Analysis indicates reality editing capability, he reported, through Vox fragmenting on systematic intervals. These devices were constructed to edit historical fact at quantum levels, ensuring retroactive non-existence rather than conventional record destruction. The horror crystallized as I understood the apparatus's true function. This chamber had been designed not just to erase the Second Legion from Imperial records, but to remove them from the timeline entirely, to ensure they never existed in any meaningful way throughout the galaxy's history. The memory extraction servitors were configured for procedures that would strip specific recollections from living minds, while the cogitator banks contained algorithms for editing reality itself. Religious dread peaked as I contemplated the implications. If the Emperor had ordered such thorough erasure, technology capable of editing reality itself, what could the Second Legion have done to necessitate not just destruction, but complete removal from the timeline? What knowledge or action could justify apparatus designed to retroactively prevent their existence across 10 millennia of Imperial history? Environmental horror escalated with walls showing brief glimpses of different architectural configurations, moments when the chamber existed in realities where it was never built, or served different purposes under alternative historical circumstances. These temporal flickers revealed construction phases, ritual consecrations, and eventual abandonment across centuries of systematic use. Temperature fluctuations created localized frost patterns forming geometric configurations, resembling circuit diagrams or ritual circles, depending on observation angle. The metallic tears increased frequency, each droplet striking surfaces with established rhythm while carrying flavor profiles, triggering genetic memories of battles that should not exist in Imperial archives. Individual team members continued experiencing brief sensor invisibility, life signs vanishing from detection equipment for nanosecond intervals before returning with expressions of confusion and half-remembered encounters with figures bearing unfamiliar heraldry. The absent moments left residual impressions of tactical formations glimpsed peripherally, battle cries in dialects that should not exist. Sergeant Corvin's service tattoos faded selectively, any markings containing paired symbols becoming transparent as flesh rejected specific numerical concepts. His Tempestus scions maintained formation despite equipment failures following systematic patterns, their carapace armor's targeting systems refusing calibration settings containing forbidden digits. The crystalline matrices surrounding the central throne dais began responding to our presence with increasing luminosity, each pulse revealing more complex geometric patterns carved into surfaces existing in multiple dimensional states simultaneously. Ancient activation protocols triggered automatically as proximity sensors detected living beings carrying knowledge related to forbidden subjects. The apparatus hummed with building power as dormant systems awakened after centuries of patient waiting. Cogitator screens flickered with data streams existing in quantum uncertainty, while memory extraction servitors descended from ceiling mounts with mechanical precision. The two-beat rhythm quickened, mechanical anticipation building toward revelations that would challenge everything we understood about Imperial history. As crystalline energy built toward critical thresholds, I realized we had become unwilling participants in completing what the Emperor himself could not finish. The crystalline matrices reached critical resonance with a sound like reality tearing along predetermined seams. Ancient systems awakened with mechanical precision, their activation protocols triggered by our presence as carriers of forbidden knowledge. The apparatus revealed its true nature through Magos Thane's Sigma 7's horrified analysis. Palinode engines, devices designed to speak reality backwards, to unsay what was said and unmake what was made. Retroactive temporal editing capability confirmed, Thane Sigma 7 reported through Vox fragmenting on systematic intervals. His optical lenses flickered with recognition as technical specifications materialized on screens existing in quantum uncertainty. These engines edit historical fact at fundamental levels of space-time structure itself. I recognized fragments from forbidden Mechanicus texts sealed within my private archive, theoretical apparatus that should never have been constructed. The engines could retroactively alter reality's basic structure, ensuring targeted subjects never existed throughout galactic history. Not destruction, but palinodic excision from the timeline itself. The engines began their work automatically, targeting anything connected to the Second Legion with surgical precision. Our investigation had marked us as contamination vectors, requiring immediate processing. Reality became unstable as gravity fluctuated in localized fields, creating zones where weight reversed according to proximity to crystalline configurations. Light bent at impossible angles, casting shadows that fell upward, while sections of the chamber existed in temporal superposition. Brother Sergeant Carax formed defensive positions, but conventional tactics proved inadequate against threats existing through systematic absence. "Form perimeter," he commanded, words occasionally failing to produce sound. Bolt rounds passed through air that momentarily solidified before returning to gas. His targeting systems refused calibration settings containing forbidden digits. The established 2-beat rhythm became a countdown, as each pulse removed another layer of the Legion's existence from reality, working backwards through time with methodical precision. Environmental warfare intensified as the engines used reality editing properties as weapons. Sections of floor simply stopped existing. Walls phased between dimensional states. Temperature became conceptual rather than physical. Body horror escalated as team members began fading at the edges, their existence becoming uncertain. Sergeant Corvin's service tattoos dissolved selectively, any markings containing paired symbols becoming transparent. His equipment started forgetting its users. Targeting reticules flickered wildly, refusing to lock onto previously acquired targets. One scion stared at his gauntlet, where the Imperial Aquila had simply ceased existing without heat or corrosion. "My name," another scion stammered, tongue fumbling over syllables that should have been natural. "I cannot remember how to pronounce it." Photographs of team members blurred when developed. Their names became difficult to speak. Individual life signs vanished from sensors for nanosecond intervals, returning with expressions of confusion and half-remembered encounters with figures in unfamiliar heraldry. Magosthane Sigma 7 attempted interfacing with the engine's control systems, mechadendrites extending toward crystalline matrices, pulsing with increasing intensity. Neural feedback struck immediately. His consciousness flooded with memories that unhappened during experience. He screamed as tactical knowledge existing in quantum uncertainty dissolved while being recalled. Steam whistled from his rebreather vents as shame protocols activated. "Engines require living focal point for completion," he reported through static. "Someone must serve as repository for erased knowledge before final obliteration. The apparatus cannot achieve total retroactive elimination without conscious witness to anchor the process." The memory extraction servitors descended from ceiling mounts with mechanical precision, neural probe arrays designed for procedures violating Imperial bioethics. These devices would strip specific recollections while preserving enough consciousness to serve as anchors for reality editing processes. Religious crisis, built as I contemplated implications. If the Emperor would construct apparatus capable of editing reality itself to erase his own sons, what did this reveal about Imperial truth? The engines represented technology beyond understanding, devices that could retroactively prevent existence itself. Equipment registered our life signs normally, except for moments when individuals vanished entirely from all sensors. We existed in quantum superposition, simultaneously present and absent depending on observation parameters. Forms flickered between states of being and non-being while the engines built toward critical activation. The apparatus hummed with building power as ancient protocols prepared completion of work begun millennia ago. Cogitator screens displayed countdown sequences in quantum uncertainty, while crystalline matrices cast shadows defying illumination physics. The 2-beat rhythm quickened with mechanical anticipation. I felt my own identity slip momentarily, my name becoming foreign sound. My inquisitorial rosette felt lighter, its authority temporarily absent as significance was systematically unwritten. The chamber leaned with attention, not physically, but like focused consciousness. Every passive sensor aligned to coordinates spelling my name without letters, pronouncing it without sound. The palinode engines approached critical resonance as targeting lattices resolved to single living coordinates. The crystalline crown above the throne dais pulsed with patient invitation, while acquisition markers settled without bouncing or dividing. Reality fractured around us as we faced choice between serving as focal points for completing the Second Legion's erasure or finding reversal for processes begun with our arrival. The countdown continued with mechanical precision, each pulse bringing total obliteration closer, while ancient systems prepared to complete what the Emperor himself could not finish. The crystalline matrices reached critical resonance as I approached the central throne dais, understanding crystallizing with the force of theological revelation. The apparatus revealed its true horror through proximity. This was not mere erasure technology, but both anchor and prison for the Second Legion's collective consciousness, bound in quantum superposition between existence and void. The throne dais radiated significance beyond its physical presence. Black stone carved with channels that once held something precious now served as a cosmic receptacle, preventing forbidden knowledge from spreading, while ensuring complete obliteration could never be achieved. The Palinode engines were designed to complete what the Emperor himself could not finish: total retroactive elimination from all possible timelines. I placed my palm against the cold stone surface. Neural feedback struck immediately, flooding my consciousness with concept transmission that bypassed language entirely. Through quantum interface with the bound essence, the truth emerged like ice forming in superheated water. Sudden, inevitable, reality-altering. The Second Legion had not been destroyed for heresy or failure. They had discovered the Emperor's ultimate plan for human transcendence and refused participation. The Master of Mankind intended systematic sacrifice of individual consciousness, forging humanity into a psychic gestalt entity under his absolute control. The Second Legion had chosen individual humanity over transcendent unity. They learned the final destination, I whispered, words occasionally failing to produce sound as reality rejected certain concepts. Human evolution through psychic merger, the transformation of our species into a single consciousness directed by imperial will. The chamber responded to this revelation by destabilizing further, reality fracturing as suppressed truth reasserted itself against containment systems. Environmental horror, peaked as past, present, and future, existed simultaneously in the same architectural space. Temperature became conceptual rather than physical, while the metallic tears increased frequency. Through temporal displacement, I experienced moments when the Second Legion still fought for the Emperor. Ghostly figures of Astartes in unfamiliar heraldry materialized around us. Deep blue ceramite with silver trim, insignia resembling severed wheels bisected by light blades. They looked directly at me with recognition and desperate warning, their forms shifting between solid matter and empty space. Brother Sergeant Carax and his iron hands suffered catastrophic cybernetic failures as their gene seed reacted to proximity with erased brothers. Targeting systems processed memories that should not exist, while servo arms moved with involuntary precision toward coordinates existing in quantum uncertainty. Machine spirits shrieked in binary cant that developed gaps where forbidden numerical sequences should flow. Gene seed memories contained tactical doctrines for campaigns alongside the Second Legion, Carax reported, confusion threading through mechanical certainty. Inherited knowledge of brothers whose names cannot be spoken, battles fought defending principles we cannot remember learning. Magos, Thane Sigma 7's analysis revealed the throne's quantum function through neural interface feedback. The Legion's collective consciousness exists in superposition, he reported through vox fragmenting systematically. Neither fully alive nor completely dead, bound to prevent knowledge spread while ensuring total erasure remains impossible. Religious crisis built as I contemplated implications for imperial faith. The Emperor had constructed apparatus capable of editing reality itself to erase his own sons. The engines represented technology beyond understanding, devices that could retroactively prevent existence to preserve secrets too dangerous for human consciousness. The temporal displacement intensified, showing glimpses of alternative histories where 20 loyal legions served together. In those realities, the Second Legion functioned as conscience for their brothers, questioning orders that violated human dignity, refusing victories requiring systematic dehumanization. They had served as living reminders that transcendence achieved through surrender of individual will was not evolution, but extinction. Individual team members continued experiencing quantum displacement, briefly existing in moments when the erased legion still fought alongside their brothers. These absent intervals left residual impressions of tactical formations glimpsed peripherally, battle cries expressing concepts that should not exist in imperial vocabulary. The chamber's architecture shifted subtly, revealing construction phases across centuries. I witnessed ritual consecration as the Emperor himself blessed apparatus designed to edit reality, his golden features twisted with necessity and sorrow. Mechanicus adepts wept sacred oils while assembling devices that violated fundamental principles of imperial truth. The Second Legion discovered that the Emperor's plan required willing sacrifice of human free will itself, I realized, throat reluctant to vocalize forbidden concepts. They refused transformation into components of a greater consciousness, choosing instead to preserve individual humanity, despite cosmic consequences. Environmental effects cascaded as the chamber existed across multiple timelines simultaneously. Walls showed different configurations: pristine construction, ritual use, eventual abandonment. The two-beat rhythm became temporal heartbeat as engines prepared final activation, each pulse revealing complex geometric patterns carved into surfaces existing in multiple dimensional states. The crystalline matrices cast shadows falling in directions defying illumination physics, while ancient activation protocols triggered automatically. Our presence as carriers of forbidden knowledge had marked us for processing by systems designed to complete erasure through living focal points. Brother Sergeant Carax dropped to one knee, forcing machine spirits into obedience through ritual and will. "By the Omnis Sire and Ferrus Manus, we deny the unmaking," he declared, words steadying reality briefly. The throne answered with tremor like approval, while conduits opened to reveal arteries leading deeper than planetary core. From those depths came new sounds, not engine rhythm, but voices in liturgical Binharic that skipped forbidden digits until a mission became sacrament. Red illumination bloomed as robed figures advanced through passages we had not noticed, their forms haloed by null fields that made equipment register impossible readings. The countdown continued with mechanical precision as I faced choice between serving as focal point for completing the Second Legion's erasure or finding means to reverse processes begun with our arrival. Ancient systems prepared completion of work the Emperor himself could not finish, while opposition approached through corridors existing in spaces between architectural possibility. The robed figures emerged from passages that opened like wounds in the chamber's architecture, their forms wreathed in null fields that made our Auspex displays register impossible negative readings. Tech adepts bearing cogwheel heraldry with systematic gaps where certain components should exist, their binary prayers carved into ceramite that emitted specific numerical sequences with religious precision. Magos Dominus Zerath Null Prime announced himself through Vox Grill modifications that filtered forbidden syllables automatically. His optical lenses had been replaced with void sensors designed to perceive absence rather than presence, creating the unsettling impression of a figure defined by what was missing rather than what remained. "Cult of necessary forgetting," he intoned through static that consumed every second word. "You carry contamination threatening reality's structural integrity, individual consciousness insufficient for cosmic truth preservation." I raised my bolt pistol as understanding crystallized with theological horror. These were not heretics, but imperial loyalists following doctrine too terrible for conventional orthodoxy. They had maintained the Palinode engines for millennia, believing certain knowledge posed existential threat to human consciousness itself. Their faith required systematic ignorance as sacrament. "The Second Legion's knowledge cannot be permitted spread," Zerath Null Prime continued, mechadendrites extending toward control interfaces with mechanical precision. "Your investigation has marked you as vectors requiring immediate processing through standard protocols." Brother Sergeant Carax opened fire with bolt rounds that fought through shifting gravity fields. The cultists wielded weaponry designed for erasure rather than destruction, null field generators that caused matter to cease existing without heat or fragmentation, memory plague canisters releasing aerosol that deleted thoughts from living minds through atmospheric transmission. Combat became surreal as both sides fought enemies existing in quantum superposition. Sections of floor never existed when cultists activated localized Palinode fields. Walls phased between dimensional states, creating barriers that existed selectively depending on observation parameters. Temperature became conceptual as thermal energy was systematically unwritten from local space-time. The two-beat rhythm accelerated into battle drum tempo as engines built toward critical activation. Each pulse brought total erasure closer, while combatants fought through temporal distortions that made coordination nearly impossible. Sergeant Corvin's Tempestus Scions maintained formation despite equipment failures. Targeting systems refused calibration settings containing forbidden digits. Vox communications dropped every second syllable. Servo skulls projected zones of absolute forgetting, creating spheres where memories simply stopped forming. One scion stepped into such a field and emerged with no recollection of his own name, staring at familiar equipment with complete incomprehension. His service tattoos had faded entirely, flesh rejecting all numerical concepts with biological revulsion. Environmental warfare intensified as the chamber's reality editing properties became weapons. The cultists manipulated architectural impossibilities with practiced efficiency, causing gravity to fluctuate in localized fields that sent bolt rounds curving through dimensions that bypassed conventional space entirely. Last beam fire passed through air that momentarily solidified before returning to gas, creating barriers of crystallized atmosphere. Memory plague canisters detonated with soft hisses, releasing vapor that spread like frost-refusing curves, creeping in right-angled blooms across armor surfaces. I tasted iron and administrative dust as proximity to active erasure fields affected cognitive function. For terrifying moments, I could not remember the writ that made me Inquisitor. My authority temporarily absent, as significance was systematically unwritten. Magos Thane Sigma 7 attempted countermeasures through direct interface with Throne Dais systems, his mechadendrites sparking where reality bit back against unauthorized access. Neural feedback flooded his consciousness with memories existing in quantum uncertainty, tactical knowledge that dissolved while being recalled, strategic doctrines that unhappened during implementation. Engines approaching critical resonance, he reported through static fragmenting systematically. Cultist activation protocols will complete erasure within standard minutes. All knowledge of Second Legion will be retroactively eliminated from timeline itself. The Iron Hands suffered complete cybernetic failure, as machine spirits could not process logical contradictions surrounding combat. Their targeting systems registered threat signatures as negative readings, while equipment forgot its users entirely. Power armor sealed against atmospheric contamination, but open to threats that did not technically exist according to conventional physics. Brother Thane's servo arm moved with involuntary confusion as tactical doctrines were systematically erased from his consciousness. Gene seed memories developed gaps where fundamental Astartes knowledge should exist, leaving void spaces in biological programming that created confusion proportional to their systematic concealment. Zerath Null Prime activated primary palinode controls with ritual precision, his movements synchronized to the chamber's accelerating heartbeat. Contamination vectors will be processed through established procedures, he announced through Vox fragmenting on predetermined intervals. Living focal points required for complete retroactive elimination. The crystalline matrices reached critical luminosity as ancient systems prepared final activation. Cogitator screens displayed countdown sequences existing in quantum uncertainty, while memory extraction servitors descended from ceiling mounts with mechanical anticipation. Neural probe arrays extended toward living targets, their purpose violating every tenet of Imperial bioethics. Religious horror built as I realized the cultists' true faith. They believed human consciousness itself was flawed, requiring systematic editing to preserve Imperial unity. The Second Legion's knowledge threatened not just political stability, but the fundamental structure of reality as experienced by individual minds. Individual team members flickered between existence states, while fighting enemies who phased in and out of reality according to observation parameters. The metallic tears increased frequency, each droplet carrying genetic memory triggers when accidentally inhaled through atmospheric filters, evoking recollections of battles that should not exist in Imperial archives. Combat intensified in chambers where physics followed quantum rules rather than conventional mechanics. The two-beat rhythm became constant harmonic, threatening to tear apart local space-time fabric. Brother Sergeant Carax forced machine spirits into compliance through ritual and will, his declarations steadying reality briefly against systematic unmaking. The countdown continued with mechanical precision as cultists attempted final erasure, while we fought to prevent completion of processes that would remove the Second Legion from all possible timelines. Magos Thane Sigma 7 made his desperate choice, approaching the throne dais with cables extending from his skull like supplicants' hands. "If the bound Legion will speak," he declared, neural interfaces seeking connection with whatever consciousness remained trapped in quantum superposition, "let it choose me as the mouth." Ancient systems turned their attention toward him with patient hunger as reality prepared for revelations that would challenge everything we understood about Imperial truth. Thane Sigma 7's interface succeeded catastrophically, his consciousness merging partially with the bound essence of the Second Legion through neural cables that sparked with quantum discharge. The connection established itself despite reality's active resistance, his augmented form becoming conduit for communication that bypassed language entirely. Through his compromised Vox grill, the voice of the lost Primarch spoke. Not words, but pure concept transmission that bypassed linguistic interpretation and struck directly into consciousness. The revelation emerged with cosmic scope, each transmitted concept reshaping fundamental understanding of Imperial doctrine. The Second Legion had discovered the Emperor's ultimate plan for human transcendence, the systematic sacrifice of individual consciousness to forge humanity into a single psychic gestalt entity under his absolute control. They had refused this transformation, choosing individual humanity over transcendent unity achieved through the obliteration of personal will. We learned the final destination, the consciousness transmitted. Through Thane Sigma 7's compromised vocal systems, concept flow creating pressure that made the chamber's architecture tremble in recognition. Human evolution through psychic merger, the transformation of our species into unified consciousness under Imperial direction. We chose preservation of individual dignity over species-wide transcendence. The chamber responded to this revelation by destabilizing further, reality fracturing, as suppressed truth reasserted itself against containment systems designed to prevent such knowledge from spreading. Environmental horror peaked as the architecture existed simultaneously across multiple temporal states, showing glimpses of construction, ritual use, and abandonment across centuries of systematic concealment. Combat intensified as the cult of necessary forgetting redoubled their efforts to complete erasure protocols. Zerath Null Prime activated emergency procedures, his null field generators creating zones where matter simply ceased existing without heat or fragmentation. Contamination vectors require immediate processing, he declared, through Vox fragmenting systematically. Individual consciousness insufficient for cosmic truth preservation. Memory plague canisters detonated with soft hisses, releasing aerosol that spread in geometric patterns, avoiding curves with deliberate precision. The vapor carried deletion algorithms designed to strip specific thoughts from living minds, but the sheer force of concept transmission from the throne dais dissipated the effects before they could achieve neural integration. Brother Sergeant Carax and his iron hands suffered complete cybernetic failure as their gene seed reacted to proximity with their erased brothers. Machine spirits shrieked in binary count developing gaps where forbidden numerical sequences should flow, their targeting systems processing inherited memories of battles fought alongside the Second Legion. Servo arms moved with involuntary precision toward coordinates existing in quantum uncertainty. Gene seed archives contain tactical protocols for scenarios we cannot recall learning, Carax reported, mechanical confusion evident in Vox undertones. Inherited knowledge of brothers whose names cannot be spoken, strategic doctrines for campaigns that should not exist in Imperial historical records. Body horror escalated as team members began existing in quantum superposition, simultaneously present and absent depending on observation parameters. Sergeant Corvin's form flickered between states of being and non-being while his equipment started forgetting its user entirely. Service tattoos dissolved selectively, flesh rejecting numerical concepts with biological revulsion. The palinode engines reached critical resonance, their crystalline matrices casting shadows that fell in directions defying illumination physics. The two-beat rhythm became constant harmonic, threatening to tear apart local space-time fabric as ancient activation protocols triggered automatically. Each pulse revealed glimpses of alternative realities where 20 loyal legions served together, the second functioning as conscience for their brothers. Through neural feedback flooding Thane Sigma 7's consciousness, the second Primarch transmitted tactical knowledge that dissolved while being received. Strategic doctrines for wars against threats dwarfing even the Tyranids, detailed plans for human psychic evolution requiring systematic sacrifice of individual consciousness, evidence that the current state of endless war and suffering was always the Emperor's intended outcome, a necessary crucible for forging humanity into something capable of surviving cosmic-scale threats. The galaxy's stagnation serves purpose beyond comprehension, the bound consciousness revealed through concept transmission. Endless conflict transforms individual humans into components suitable for merger. Current suffering acceptable cost for species survival against forces existing beyond conventional understanding. Religious crisis built as I contemplated implications for imperial faith. The Emperor's grand design encompassed millennia of systematic dehumanization, preparing humanity for transformation into a unified psychic entity designed to face enemies that individual consciousness could never comprehend or resist. The Second Legion had refused participation in this cosmic gambit, accepting erasure rather than becoming willing components in species-wide lobotomy. Environmental warfare escalated as both sides fought through temporal distortions, making coordination nearly impossible. Gravity fluctuated in localized fields, while temperature became conceptual rather than physical. The metallic tears increased frequency, each droplet carrying genetic memory triggers, evoking recollections of battles that should not exist in Imperial archives. Individual team members continued flickering between existence states, while the chamber showed glimpses of what the galaxy would become with unified human consciousness versus the current timeline of betrayal and endless preparation. In those alternative futures, humanity remained recognizably human, while facing cosmic threats through voluntary cooperation, rather than enforced mental merger. Magos Thane Sigma 7's form, destabilized as neural interface, flooded his systems with memories existing in quantum uncertainty. Steam whistled from rebreather vents as shame protocols activated at inability to process logical contradictions surrounding the revelation. His augmented systems sparked where reality bit back against unauthorized access to forbidden knowledge. The cultists intensified their assault, firing erasure lances that deleted holes in memory of where they landed. Null spears thrust into Deus controls, seeking compression of signal back into containment. The Astartes answered with bolt shells, insisting explosively on reality of targets they struck, each impact an argument for existence against systematic obliteration. Through temporal displacement, I experienced moments of the Second Legion's final choice, refusing orders that would transform their gene sons into psychic components of the Emperor's consciousness. They had chosen individual humanity over transcendent survival, accepting complete erasure rather than participating in transformation disguised as evolution. The countdown continued with mechanical precision as bound consciousness transmitted forbidden truth through our compromised ally. Ancient systems prepared completion of work begun with our arrival, while reality fractured under pressure of revelations challenging everything we understood about Imperial doctrine and the true nature of the Emperor's cosmic plan for human transcendence. The crisis reached its peak as the palinode engines began to reverse their function, accumulated power from millennia of systematic erasure suddenly flowing backwards through crystalline matrices that screamed with quantum discharge. Instead of removing the Second Legion from existence, the engines started forcibly reintegrating them into reality. But the process proved catastrophically unstable after so long in void state suspension. The chamber became a battlefield between existence and non-existence as fragments of the Lost Legion began manifesting around us. Ghostly Astartes warriors existing only partially, their forms shifting between solid matter and empty space with each pulse of the reversed engines. Deep blue ceramite with silver trim flickered in and out of visual range, their insignia resembling severed wheels bisected by light blades, appearing briefly before dissolving into quantum uncertainty. Reintegration cascade initiated. Magosthane Sigma 7 reported through neural interface feedback that sparked with dangerous overload, his consciousness remaining partially merged with the bound essence. Millennia of void state existence has created paradoxical stability. Forced restoration threatens timeline integrity at fundamental levels. The horrible truth crystallized as I watched ghostly Legion warriors phase between dimensional states, their spectral bolt rounds creating impact patterns that defied conventional ballistics. Completing the reversal would restore the Second Legion to full existence, but at the cost of unraveling the current timeline entirely. 10 millennia of Imperial history would be systematically erased, replaced by alternative reality, where 20 loyal legions served together under circumstances that never allowed the Horus heresy to occur. Environmental horror escalated as the chamber began existing across multiple timelines simultaneously. Walls showed different architectural configurations, pristine construction phases, ritual consecration ceremonies, eventual abandonment, while temperature fluctuations created localized frost patterns, forming geometric shapes that hurt to observe directly. The metallic tears increased. Frequency, each droplet carrying genetic memory triggers of battles that existed in quantum superposition between what was and what could have been. The moral choice crystallized with theological precision. I could allow the engines to complete their reversed function, restoring the Lost Legion, but destroying everything that came after their erasure. Alternatively, I could find means to stop the process, preserving current reality at the cost of condemning the Second Legion to eternal void existence between states of being and non-being. Combat became surreal as both sides fought enemies existing in quantum superposition. Brother Sergeant Carax opened fire with bolt rounds that passed through targets existing selectively depending on observation parameters, his cybernetic systems failing catastrophically as machine spirits could not process logical contradictions surrounding the temporal paradox. Without his servo arm, he moved like a predator designed by divine engineering, pure biological fury compensating for technological abandonment. Gene seed memories contain tactical doctrines for scenarios existing in alternative timelines, he reported. Mechanical confusion threading through his Vox grill as targeting systems registered threat signatures as both positive and negative readings simultaneously. Inherited knowledge of campaigns fought alongside brothers whose existence threatens current reality's structural stability. The cultists responded with null field generators creating zones where matter ceased existing, but the reversed palinode fields caused these weapons to malfunction catastrophically. Zerath Null Prime activated emergency protocols, his form wreathed in containment fields designed to prevent contamination spread beyond acceptable parameters. Reintegration process threatens reality's fundamental architecture, he declared, through Vox fragmenting systematically. Current timeline must be preserved despite individual consciousness contamination. The species requires continuity over compassion. Individual team members flickered between existent states more frequently, their forms becoming translucent as the engines built toward critical activation. Sergeant Corvin's service tattoos dissolved selectively before reappearing with different designs, his flesh rejecting certain numerical concepts, while accepting alternatives that should not exist in Imperial iconography. The ghostly Legion warriors became more solid with each pulse, their forms stabilizing briefly before dissolving back into quantum uncertainty. They fought alongside us against the cultists, spectral weapons firing rounds of pure possibility that caused targets to momentarily cease existing before snapping back into reality with disoriented screams. Memory plague canisters detonated ineffectively as the reversed engines dissipated deletion algorithms before they could achieve neural integration. The sheer force of reintegration overwhelmed containment systems designed for erasure, creating feedback loops that threatened to tear apart local space-time fabric entirely. Environmental warfare intensified as gravity fluctuated in localized fields, creating zones where weight reversed according to proximity to crystalline configurations. Light bent at impossible angles, while sections of the chamber existed in temporal superposition, showing glimpses of what the galaxy would become with restored legion versus current timeline of endless conflict and systematic dehumanization. The two-beat rhythm became constant harmonic as engines approached critical overload. Each pulse revealed complex geometric patterns carved into surfaces existing in multiple dimensional states, architectural impossibilities that made equipment register readings in numerical sequences that should not exist according to Imperial mathematics. Religious horror built as I contemplated implications for Imperial faith. The restoration process would vindicate the Second Legion's choice to preserve individual humanity, but at cost of erasing 10 millennia of human development through systematic conflict designed to prepare the species for psychic merger under the Emperor's ultimate plan. Margos Thane Sigma 7's form destabilized further as neural interface flooded his consciousness with memories existing across multiple timelines simultaneously. Engines require conscious choice for stabilization, he transmitted through concept flow that bypassed linguistic interpretation entirely. Someone must serve as anchor point between realities to prevent complete temporal collapse. The crystalline matrices reached critical luminosity as ancient systems prepared final activation. The cultists made their final assault, while reality prepared for revelations that would determine whether current existence continued or was replaced by alternative timeline, where the Second Legion's knowledge preserved individual human dignity against cosmic-scale transformation. The countdown continued with mechanical precision, as I faced the ultimate choice between preserving everything I had sworn to protect and potentially saving a galaxy that might never remember my sacrifice. Through Thane Sigma 7's compromise consciousness, the second Primarch revealed the Emperor's ultimate gambit with concept transmission that bypassed language entirely, striking directly into my understanding with the force of theological revelation. The erasure had never been permanent destruction. It was a temporal shell game played across cosmic timescales, hiding the Second Legion in quantum potential until specific conditions aligned in the galaxy's future. The engines contained dual function, the bound consciousness transmitted through neural interface feedback that made reality tremble in recognition. Archivum duplex, preservation disguised as obliteration. We were hidden in void state until the galaxy required our specific knowledge to prevent catastrophe, beyond current understanding. The crystalline matrices pulsed with building energy as the revelation unfolded. The Palinode engines had been constructed with hidden protocols beyond simple erasure. They preserved in quantum superposition, maintaining the Legion in state of potential existence ready for restoration when cosmic conditions demanded their return. Those conditions were now manifesting, the great rifts opening, Guilliman's return bearing law to bind and break, and the galaxy's inexorable slide toward final darkness. Environmental horror escalated as the chamber existed across multiple temporal states simultaneously, showing glimpses of possible futures where the Second Legion's knowledge could tip balance between salvation and damnation. In some timelines, their tactical doctrines prevented human extinction through voluntary cooperation. In others, their refusal to accept transformation led to species-wide obliteration by forces beyond individual comprehension. Current timeline serves preparation function, the Primarch continued, concept flow creating pressure that made chamber architecture respond with harmonic resonance. 10 millennia of systematic conflict transforms individual humans into components suitable for merger when cosmic threats emerge, requiring unified consciousness for species survival. Brother Sergeant Carax fought with pure biological fury as his cybernetic systems failed completely, machine spirits unable to process logical contradictions surrounding temporal paradox. Gene seed memories contain strategic knowledge for wars against threats dwarfing current understanding, he reported through Vox crackling with systematic interference. Inherited doctrines for scenarios requiring unified human consciousness or species extinction. The cultists intensified efforts to complete original erasure, believing certain knowledge posed existential threat even to the Emperor's cosmic plans. Zerath Null Prime activated final protocols, his null field generators creating zones where matter ceased existing, while memory plague canisters released aerosol designed to strip specific thoughts from living minds. Some truths threaten reality's structural integrity, he declared through fragmenting Vox Grill. Individual consciousness insufficient for cosmic-scale survival. The species requires systematic preparation through conflict rather than premature revelation of ultimate purpose. Religious crisis built as I contemplated implications for imperial faith. The Emperor's plan encompassed preparations spanning cosmic timescales, with current suffering serving as acceptable cost for species survival against threats that individual consciousness could never comprehend or resist. The Second Legion's knowledge offered alternative path, preservation of human dignity while achieving necessary unity through choice rather than systematic obliteration of personal will. The ghostly Legion warriors became more solid with each pulse, their spectral weapons firing rounds of pure possibility that caused targets to momentarily cease existing before snapping back into reality. They fought alongside us while existing partially, their tactical knowledge transmitted through combat actions rather than conventional communication. Magos Thane Sigma 7's neural interface sparked with dangerous overload as his consciousness processed memories existing across multiple timelines simultaneously. Steam whistled from rebreather vents as shame protocols activated at inability to process logical contradictions surrounding the revelation. Restoration requires conscious anchor point, the second Primarch revealed through neural feedback flooding Thane Sigma 7's compromised systems. Someone must accept void state existence to maintain cosmic balance, while Legion returns to reality. Quantum mechanics demands equivalent exchange rather than simple addition. Individual team members flickered between existence states as the chamber showed glimpses of alternative histories. In realities where the Second Legion remained loyal, humanity developed differently, preserving individual dignity while facing cosmic challenges through voluntary cooperation rather than enforced mental unity, achieved through millennia of systematic dehumanization. Temperature became conceptual while gravity fluctuated in localized fields, creating zones where weight reversed according to proximity to crystalline configurations. The metallic tears increased frequency, each droplet carrying genetic memory triggers, evoking recollections existing in quantum superposition between what was and what could have been. Combat intensified as both sides fought through temporal distortions, making coordination nearly impossible. The two-beat rhythm became constant, harmonic, threatening to tear apart local space-time fabric, while the chamber existed simultaneously across multiple dimensional states, showing glimpses of construction, ritual use, and eventual abandonment. The crystalline matrices reached critical luminosity as ancient systems prepared final activation. Through temporal displacement, I witnessed the Emperor's original blessing of apparatus, designed to edit reality. His golden features twisted with necessity and cosmic foresight spanning millennia of systematic preparation for threats beyond current understanding. The moral choice crystallized with absolute clarity. I could preserve current timeline at cost of condemning Second Legion to eternal void existence, or accept their restoration, knowing it would fundamentally alter everything that followed their erasure. The Emperor's gambit required willing participation. Someone must choose between individual survival and potentially saving galaxy through restored forbidden knowledge. The countdown continued with mechanical precision as I approached the throne dais, understanding that restoration would mark me as carrier of truth too dangerous for Imperial consciousness, while potentially providing knowledge necessary for humanity's ultimate survival against cosmic-scale threats waiting in darkness between stars. Ancient systems prepared completion of work spanning cosmic timescales, while reality fractured under pressure of revelations that would determine whether the Emperor's ultimate plan achieved its intended purpose through willing sacrifice, or collapsed under weight of individual human dignity, refusing systematic obliteration for transcendent unity. The Palinode engines screamed with harmonics that bypassed auditory processing entirely, their crystalline matrices reaching critical instability that threatened to tear permanent wounds in reality's fabric. The two-beat rhythm had accelerated into constant harmonic, threatening to unravel space-time structure throughout the sector. All parties converged on the throne dais as environmental horror peaked. Gravity fluctuated in localized fields, temperature became conceptual rather than physical, and the metallic tiers increased to torrential flow, creating geometric patterns that reflected fragments of multiple timelines simultaneously. I made my choice with theological precision, understanding crystallizing like ice, forming in superheated water. The engines required conscious anchor to prevent catastrophic timeline collapse, and my inquisitorial training in psychic resistance would allow controlled interface rather than uncontrolled reintegration, threatening to erase 10 millennia of Imperial history. I will serve as bridge, I declared, approaching the throne despite Brother Sergeant Carax's mechanical protests and the cultists' intensified assault. The black stone radiated cold that bypassed armor thermal regulation entirely, its carved channels humming with residual power of Legion consciousness, bound in quantum superposition. Zirath Null Prime led his cult of necessary forgetting in desperate final push, null field generators creating zones where matter ceased existing without heat or fragmentation. Timeline integrity demands completion of original protocols, he declared through vox fragmenting systematically. Memory extraction servitors descended from ceiling mounts with mechanical precision, neural probe arrays extending toward living targets in procedures violating every tenet of Imperial bioethics. Combat reached peak intensity as partially restored Legion warriors fought to protect the restoration process. Ghostly Astartes in deep blue ceramite with silver trim materialized around us, their spectral weapons firing rounds of pure possibility that caused cultist targets to momentarily cease existing before snapping back into reality with disoriented screams. They moved with tactical precision, referencing doctrines surgically excised from Imperial knowledge. The process began as I placed both palms against the throne's surface. Neural feedback struck immediately, my consciousness assaulted by accumulated memories of entire Legion, thousands of warriors existing in quantum uncertainty for millennia. Through shared experience flooding my awareness, I witnessed the true scope of the Emperor's cosmic plan, systematic preparation of humanity for transformation into unified psychic entity capable of surviving threats beyond individual comprehension. Brother Sergeant Carax fought with pure biological fury, his cybernetic systems having failed completely under logical contradictions surrounding temporal paradox. By Ferrus Manus and the Omnissiah, he declared, bolt rounds insisting explosively on reality of targets they struck. His gene seed memories processed inherited knowledge of battles fought alongside erased brothers whose existence challenged fundamental Imperial assumptions. Individual team members flickered between existence states while reality became completely unstable. Past, present, and future existed simultaneously in chamber architecture. Sergeant Corvin's service tattoos dissolved and reformed with different designs, his flesh rejecting certain numerical concepts while accepting alternatives that should not exist in Imperial iconography. The moral complexity crystallized through neural interface as I experienced moments of the Second Legion's final choice. They had discovered the Emperor's ultimate plan required willing sacrifice of individual consciousness, forging humanity into components suitable for merger when cosmic-scale enemies emerged from darkness between stars. They chose preservation of human dignity over transcendent survival, achieved through systematic obliteration of personal will. Contamination vectors require immediate processing, Zirath Null Prime snarled, driving null spears into control systems. Reality bent away like sail in gale as void weapons created expanding spheres of absolute absence. Sergeant Corvin intercepted the killing blow meant for me, hurling himself with clean commitment of duty completed. The null spear kissed his breastplate without impact or flame. A perfect circle simply ceased existing where his heart had been. He looked down through the absence with confusion, then smiled like cadet correct under inspection and folded gently. I filed his sacrifice in mental space, where grief would keep without rotting operational capacity, taking the blow meant for me with part of myself I could spare. A sliver of Cassia Vex vanished like breath on cold metal. My consciousness stretched between vast, echoing void of Legion collective mind and crumbling reality of chamber. I felt their loneliness, quiet defiance, understanding of terrible burden placed upon them. My own existence began shifting toward quantum uncertainty, becoming bridge between realities at cost of individual stability. Magos Thane's Sigma 7's form destabilized as neural feedback flooded his systems with memories existing across multiple timelines simultaneously. Regulate amplitude, he urged, mechadendrites sparking as he throttled flows beyond. Conventional perception. Phase lock transfer to engine inverse harmonics. The crystalline matrices reached critical luminosity as ancient systems prepared final activation. Through restoration process, the Second Legion's knowledge flowed like cold fire, tactical doctrines for wars against threats dwarfing Tyranid hive fleets, strategic preparations for voluntary human cooperation rather than enforced mental unity, evidence that current galactic stagnation served cosmic purpose beyond conventional understanding. Environmental warfare escalated with cultists firing erasure lances that deleted holes in memory of where they landed. The ghostly Legion warriors became more solid with each pulse, their forms stabilizing enough to leave indentations in dust that remembered them. They positioned themselves covering firing lanes with reflexes taught in war schools, existing in timeline adjacent to ours. The countdown continued with mechanical precision as I anchored myself to simple fact: pressure of throne under spine. My outline wavered as fingers became figures, bone checking itself out of inventory before returning when observed. The engines thrummed, matched to my pulse, asking only that I remain constant slightly longer. Lock phase, I commanded, and meant it enough that phrase became temporarily true. Ancient systems prepared completion of work spanning cosmic timescales, while reality prepared for revelations, determining whether Emperor's ultimate plan achieved intended purpose through willing sacrifice. The bridge established itself with neural precision that made reality tremble in recognition. My consciousness successfully anchored the flow between Void State's Second Legion and material existence, but the cost became immediately apparent. I began fading into the same quantum uncertainty that had claimed them for millennia. My existence shifted from absolute to contingent, flickering at perception's edges like frost forming on heated metal. The restoration proceeded in controlled fashion, as forbidden knowledge flowed into reality without catastrophic timeline collapse. Through neural interface flooding my awareness, the Legion's accumulated wisdom transmitted with devastating clarity, detailed plans for humanity's psychic evolution requiring systematic sacrifice of individual consciousness, tactical doctrines for wars against threats dwarfing even the Tyranid hive fleets, strategic preparations spanning cosmic timescales beyond mortal comprehension. Most horrifying was evidence that the current galactic state, endless war, suffering, systematic stagnation, had always been the Emperor's intended outcome. 10 millennia of calculated conflict served as necessary crucible for forging humanity into something capable of surviving cosmic-scale threats waiting in darkness between stars. The Horus Heresy, the Age of Strife, even our current slide toward darkness, all deliberate preparation for transformation into unified psychic entity under his absolute control. "This is war by refusal," Brother Sergeant Karax declared, his voice carrying weight of inherited understanding as his cybernetic systems remained offline, unable to process logical contradictions surrounding temporal restoration. Victory measured in who remains themselves. He fought with pure biological fury, gene seed memories processing tactical knowledge for scenarios requiring unified human consciousness or species extinction against enemies beyond individual comprehension. The ghostly Legion warriors materialized around us in deep blue ceramite, with silver trim, their spectral forms teaching with economy of warriors who had spent centuries paying by the syllable. They showed us how to build cordons against concepts, how to defilade thoughts, how to collapse corridors in mercy before admitting what followed. They never spoke the Emperor's name, but everything in them knew him perfectly. Magos Thane Sigma 7's form stabilized as neural feedback reached equilibrium, his consciousness permanently altered by interface with Legion collective mind. Individual identity compromised, he reported through static fragmenting on predetermined intervals. He had become living repository of their strategic wisdom at cost of personal identity, his augmented systems processing inherited memories of campaigns fought alongside erased brothers whose existence challenged fundamental Imperial assumptions. The surviving team members became unwilling carriers of truth too dangerous for Imperial acknowledgement. The knowledge flowing through neural interface revealed the Emperor's true nature, not God Emperor of humanity, but cosmic strategist preparing our species for transformation into something capable of surviving threats that individual consciousness could never comprehend or resist. Zerath Null Prime made his final gambit as restoration reached critical phase, driving null spears into control systems while declaring through fragmenting Vox Grill, contamination vectors require containment through necessary sacrifice. Individual consciousness insufficient for cosmic truth preservation. His erasure technology was overwhelmed by controlled restoration, but he achieved Pyrrhic victory, ensuring knowledge could not spread beyond those present in the chamber. Brother Sergeant Carax intercepted the killing blow meant for me, hurling himself with clean commitment of duty completed. The null spear kissed his breastplate without impact or flame. A perfect circle simply ceased existing where his heart had been. He looked down through the absence with confusion, then smiled like a cadet correct under inspection, and folded gently. I filed his sacrifice in mental space where grief would keep without rotting operational capacity. The containment mechanism activated as ancient systems completed their programmed function. The knowledge remained preserved but sealed, creating geometric barriers around revelation that made certain routes out of my consciousness shorter than others. Anything I tried to write about the Legion's discovery would curve gently back into metaphor. Any order relying on naked statement would clothe itself in operational euphemism. The price of keeping truth alive without letting it explode was becoming its sheath. The Iron Hands survivors suffered complete memory modification as environmental effects stabilized, their experiences edited to show only routine investigation of abandoned Mechanicus facilities. However, they carried subconscious knowledge that would influence future actions in subtle but crucial ways. Inherited understanding of threats requiring unified response, tactical instincts for scenarios existing beyond conventional Imperial doctrine. Zerath Null Prime achieved his final victory through willing sacrifice, opening his chest like a reliquary to reveal sanctified archive core, nested in ribs of logic ceramic. By privilege of ignorance, he intoned, voice sifting into fewer words, we seal contagion within personal containers. Let truth live and stay. The seal took, hooking into me like vow I could not break with defiance, but only carry with duty. The chamber sealed itself permanently as Palinode engines exhausted their final function, reality editing apparatus powering down with mechanical size, while memory extraction servitors retracted into sealing mounts. The 2-beat rhythm slowed to normal heartbeat tempo, becoming patient respiration of sleeping colossus rather than frantic countdown toward obliteration. My own existence stabilized in twilight state between Inquisitor and void-touched Oracle, carrying fragments of forbidden knowledge sufficient to recognize cosmic threats when they emerged, but insufficient to act without careful preparation and absolute secrecy. The burden of necessary truth settled like frost, forming geometric patterns on surfaces refusing conventional physics. The facility would remain accessible only to those who already knew what they sought, existing in quantum state between discovery and concealment. Keth Secundus became monument to necessary forgetting. Its existence stabilized in superposition, where it could be found only by individuals carrying specific knowledge, visible when observed indirectly, vanishing during direct examination according to quantum rules governing forbidden truth. As we prepared departure through corridors that shortened in recollection, I realized we had become custodians of knowledge too dangerous for revelation, yet potentially necessary for species survival. The Emperor's cosmic gambit continued across timescales beyond individual comprehension, with the Second Legion's restoration representing single move in game, whose scope encompassed reality's fundamental survival against threats waiting in darkness between stars. The metallic taste of copper and sorrow remained permanent reminder of truth's price, while the two-beat rhythm now pulsed within my altered heart, a countdown not toward destruction, but toward choices yet to be made when cosmic conditions demanded forbidden knowledge to preserve what remained of human dignity in face of transcendent necessity. The chamber sealed itself with mechanical finality, reality editing apparatus powering down as ancient systems completed their programmed function. The Palinode engines exhausted themselves in controlled restoration, crystalline matrices dimming to obsidian, while memory extraction servitors retracted into ceiling mounts with sighs of completion. The two-beat rhythm slowed from frantic countdown to patient respiration, becoming heartbeat of sleeping colossus rather than temporal weapon-threatening galactic stability. The Second Legion existed once more, but in quantum superposition, defying conventional understanding, real enough to provide tactical knowledge to those who needed it, yet too unstable to manifest in physical galaxy. Their consciousness remained accessible through neural interface while avoiding timeline collapse that uncontrolled reintegration would have caused. I found myself similarly affected, existing in twilight state between Inquisitor and void-touched Oracle. My reflection showed gaps where certain details should exist, as if reality itself had developed selective blindness to specific aspects of my identity. The containment mechanism had transformed me into living repository of forbidden knowledge, sufficient to recognize cosmic threats when they emerged, insufficient to act without careful preparation spanning centuries. Magos Thane Sigma 7 underwent permanent transformation, his consciousness altered beyond recovery by interface with Legion collective mind. Individual identity had been compromised, replaced by living archive of their tactical wisdom. His optical lenses displayed data streams existing in quantum uncertainty, while augmented systems processed inherited memories of campaigns fought alongside erased brothers. Archival integration complete, he reported, through Vox no longer fragmenting systematically. Steam no longer whistled from rebreathe events. Shame protocols, overwritten by necessity algorithms, accepting burden of forbidden understanding. The price of preserving their knowledge was becoming its vessel, individual personality subordinated to cosmic necessity. The surviving Iron Hands suffered complete memory modification as environmental effects stabilized. Their experiences had been edited to show routine investigation of abandoned facilities, but subconscious knowledge remained embedded in gene seed memories. They would carry inherited understanding of threats requiring unified response, tactical instincts for scenarios beyond conventional doctrine, wisdom influencing future actions in subtle but crucial ways. Brother Sergeant Carax's sacrifice had been edited from their recollection, but his tactical wisdom lived on in inherited responses. They moved with precision, referencing doctrines they could not consciously remember, formations adapting to threats that should not exist according to standard training. Knowledge persisted despite systematic concealment, ensuring preparedness for cosmic challenges without conscious awareness of their source. The burden of necessary truth settled like weight, increasing with distance from its source. Each step away from the chamber made knowledge heavier, more difficult to access consciously, while remaining available to subconscious processing. The containment mechanism functioned perfectly, preserving forbidden understanding while preventing uncontrolled revelation that could destabilize Imperial faith. Departure proceeded through corridors that shortened in recollection, architecture editing itself to prevent detailed memory of specific configurations. Metallic tears had ceased, but geometric patterns remained etched in surfaces refusing conventional physics. Frost continued forming angular configurations, avoiding curves with deliberate precision, ice crystals growing in circuit patterns that hurt to observe directly. The planet itself became monument to necessary forgetting, existence stabilized in quantum state, where it could be found only by those already carrying specific knowledge. Keth Secundus existed in superposition between discovery and concealment, visible when observed indirectly, vanishing during direct examination according to rules governing forbidden truth. The facility would remain accessible to future investigators who already understood what they sought. My attempts at filing investigative reports revealed bureaucratic horror as data slates refused saving documents containing specific terminology. Text dissolved whenever certain word combinations appeared in sequence, authentication protocols failing when attempting classification under established categories. The knowledge existed, but resisted documentation, creating selective amnesia in recording systems while remaining accessible to direct neural interface. Any report I tried to write about the Legion's discovery would curve gently back into metaphor. Orders relying on naked statement clothed themselves in operational euphemism. The price of keeping truth alive without letting it explode was becoming its sheath, a living seal that made certain routes out of consciousness shorter than others. Environmental effects persisted as reminders of cosmic truth encountered. Temperature fluctuations created breath fog, forming geometric patterns before dissipating according to atmospheric rules, violating basic physics. The 2-beat rhythm now pulsed within my altered cardiovascular system, permanent countdown not toward destruction, but toward choices yet to be made when cosmic conditions demanded forbidden knowledge. As we reached surface through passages existing in multiple spatial configurations simultaneously, I understood the true scope of the Emperor's cosmic gambit. The Second Legions. Restoration represented single move in game-spanning millennia, with knowledge preserved in quantum state, until circumstances demanded its application for species survival against threats waiting in darkness between stars. The unrelenting truth waited in orbit around planet that flickered between existence and absence, depending on observation parameters. Our return journey would be edited from ship's logs, crew memories modified to show routine patrol duties rather than investigation of forbidden truth. Only we few would carry burden of knowledge too dangerous for revelation, yet potentially necessary for humanity's ultimate survival. Standing on observation deck, as Keth Secundus faded from direct observation, I realized we had become unwilling participants in cosmic preparation spanning timescales beyond individual comprehension. The Emperor's plan continued across millennia, with forbidden knowledge preserved until circumstances demanded its application against enemies existing beyond conventional understanding. The facility sealed itself permanently, reality editing apparatus ensuring future access would require specific understanding already possessed by seekers. The chamber existed in superposition between discovery and concealment, monument to necessary forgetting that preserved forbidden truth while preventing uncontrolled spread throughout Imperial consciousness. Similar chambers might exist on other worlds, other legions waiting in quantum states, their truths hidden until cosmic conditions aligned for revelation. The game whose scope encompassed reality's survival itself was far from complete. I returned to my duties as Inquisitor, fundamentally changed by experience that resisted documentation yet could not be forgotten. The burden of forbidden knowledge settled like frost, forming geometric patterns on surfaces refusing conventional physics, creating weight that increased with distance from its source while remaining essential to consciousness, altered beyond recovery. The familiar taste of recycled air and sanctified incense aboard the unrelenting truth now carried subtle undertones of copper and sorrow, permanent reminder of truth sealed within me. My chronometer continued skipping the second hour, while equipment systematically omitted certain numerical sequences, verification that experience transcended conventional reality rather than elaborate hallucination induced by warp exposure. My private study became sanctuary for truth too dangerous for revelation. Here, surrounded by texts sealed beyond conventional classification levels, I began establishing hidden network within the Inquisition, carefully selecting individuals who could be trusted with fragments of cosmic understanding without triggering systematic madness or faith-destroying revelation. The selection process required precision beyond standard psychological evaluation. I sought minds capable of processing paradox without breaking, souls strong enough to carry partial truth while maintaining operational effectiveness. Each candidate underwent subtle testing through seemingly routine assignments, their responses to impossible scenarios revealing capacity for forbidden knowledge. Magos Thane Sigma 7 served as living archive, his consciousness permanently altered by interface with Legion collective mind. Individual identity had been subordinated to necessity, but his augmented systems processed inherited memories with mechanical precision. Through careful neural interface sessions, fragments of tactical wisdom could be extracted and transmitted to selected recipients without revealing source or scope. The two-beat rhythm that haunted our investigation now followed me everywhere, constant reminder of price paid for cosmic understanding. It pulsed within my altered cardiovascular system. Countdown, not toward destruction, but toward decisions yet to be made when circumstances demanded forbidden knowledge for preservation of what remained essentially human. Brother Sergeant Carax's sacrifice lived on in tactical doctrines I began incorporating into Astartes' training protocols. His final understanding that victory was measured in who remained themselves became foundational principle for preparing humanity's defenders against threats requiring unified response while preserving individual dignity. Knowledge persisted despite systematic concealment, ensuring preparedness without conscious awareness of source. The Iron Hand survivors continued their duties within the chapter, their memories modified, but carrying subconscious knowledge influencing future actions. They possessed inherited understanding of threats requiring coordinated response, tactical instincts for scenarios beyond conventional doctrine, wisdom that would shape their deeds, though they remained unaware of its source. My attempts at direct documentation continued failing as data slates refused saving reports containing specific terminology. Any reference to Second Legion caused screens to grey into mirrors, reflecting confused expression. Instead, I developed coded language for transmitting essential concepts through seemingly routine reports, classified beyond conventional levels. The hidden network grew with careful precision across standard years, each member carrying fragment of truth too dangerous for complete revelation. Inquisitor Valerius specialized in xenoarchaeological anomalies, defying conventional physics. Canoness Seraphina developed tactical doctrines for scenarios requiring voluntary cooperation rather than enforced unity. Magos Explorator Draconis investigated technological artifacts exhibiting quantum uncertainty properties. None possessed complete understanding, but collective knowledge created preparation network for threats that might not emerge for centuries. The Emperor's cosmic gambit continued across timescales beyond individual comprehension, with each participant serving specific function in game whose scope encompassed reality's fundamental survival against enemies waiting in darkness between stars. Environmental effects persisted as constant reminders of cosmic truth encountered. Frost formed angular patterns on viewport surfaces, avoiding curves with deliberate precision. Temperature fluctuations created breath fog forming geometric configurations before dissipating, according to atmospheric rules violating basic physics. My reflection in polished surfaces showed gaps where certain details should exist, as if reality maintained selective blindness to specific aspects of identity. Reports I filed contained coded references accessible only to network members. Standard terminology concealed deeper meaning: routine patrol, indicated successful preservation of forbidden knowledge. Equipment malfunction suggested encounter with quantum uncertainty effects. Personnel reassignment meant recruitment of suitable candidates for network expansion. The burden grew heavier with understanding crystallized through experience. The Second Legion's knowledge offered glimpse of Emperor's true plan, systematic preparation of humanity for transformation into unified psychic entity capable of surviving cosmic-scale threats. Current galactic stagnation served deliberate purpose, forging individual consciousness into components suitable for eventual merger when circumstances demanded species-wide unity. Standing in private study while reviewing classified reports, I understood scope of responsibility accepted. We were custodians of truth too dangerous for revelation, yet potentially necessary for species survival. The network must remain hidden while preparing for choices that might not come for millennia, maintaining readiness for cosmic challenges requiring forbidden knowledge. Similar chambers might exist on other worlds, additional legions waiting in quantum states until cosmic conditions aligned for revelation. The facility on Keth Secundus remained accessible only to those already carrying burden of necessary truth, monument to systematic forgetting that preserved forbidden understanding while preventing uncontrolled spread throughout Imperial consciousness. The final image showed frost forming on my viewport, in familiar geometric patterns, as I composed reports destined for archives accessible only to those sharing the burden. Somewhere in darkness between stars, ancient enemies waited for humanity to complete transformation into something capable of resistance, while the Emperor's plan, whose scope encompassed reality's survival itself, remained far from complete. The burden eternal had become mine to bear until circumstances demanded its revelation.